walked into a room and all of a sudden you just have no idea why? 3 years ago, during the pandemic, a good friend of mine came to visit me for the weekend. So on that warm Friday evening, I walked the few short blocks to my local supermarket to buy some food for us. But just as I got inside, I suddenly stopped. My mind went completely blank, and I just stood staring, confused. I knew I was in a supermarket. I knew that's where we go to get food, but suddenly all the items on the shelves just looked completely unfamiliar. And I just couldn't figure out how to put all these strange things together. After a few moments, I started to sense that something was wrong. And I wondered if this was early onset dementia, because I couldn't think of anything other than the fact that I couldn't think, as though my brain had just stopped functioning. And this was terrifying, especially for a nerd like me. I got the sense that my internal combustion engine had overheated. Indeed, it had. Like many others during the pandemic, I was in the midst of a severe burnout. I should have known this. Actually, I kind of did. Because 5 months earlier, my doctor had said to me, "Yanya, you're having a burnout. This is very serious. You may need to go to hospital." But the stubborn lawyer in me went, "Oh, no. That won't be happening." Like many others, I didn't realize what was going on inside me until things were really bad. I couldn't sleep at night, but it was all I wanted to do during the day. I had no motivation, no passion, nothing brought me joy. Checking the letterbox, my emails, taking out the garbage, replying to concerned friends' text messages, these simple things now required Herculean effort. My body experienced bizarre sensations. Often my mind alternated between racing, incoherent thoughts and then blank, dark space. My attention span and memory quickly earned me the nickname Dory. You know that forgetful fish from Finding Nemo? My immune system crashed. I cried a lot. I developed severe anxiety, depression. I thought about ending my life. In my 17-year career, I've worked on cyber and data protection issues from a variety of angles. First as a lawyer, prosecuting cybercrime and privacy invasions, and then advising organizations on cyber attacks and data breaches. This is a photo of me after I'd just delivered an online presentation on AI and data ethics to a group of business executives. I've got my nerd glasses on, my business attire, the obligatory white backdrop. As the saying goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. But behind this picture is a bigger story. Actually, I'm not in a pristine white office at all. I'm sitting at the end of my hospital bed on the 3rd day of a burnout treatment program that I checked myself into 6 months after that supermarket incident. I was determined to give that presentation, so I'd snuck away that morning with my laptop. I'd closed the windows and drawn the curtains because I was deeply ashamed of where I was and why. And I didn't want to give my location or my situation away to my professional audience. No, instead I decided to wait a couple of years and share it on the TED stage. In the 2 months that followed that photograph, I spent the very slow process, rebooting and reprogramming my internal operating system. In hospital, I noticed a number of things, and I took note of them. I was determined to make something productive out of the experience, not just recover. The first thing I noticed was the number of people burning out. It was like a revolving door of chronically exhausted, stressed people. It seemed to me that there were too many of us for this to be just an individual personality problem. It seemed to be symptomatic of a much bigger, much broader organisational issue. And unfortunately, I was right. Burnout is categorised by the World Health Organization not as a medical condition, but as an occupational phenomenon caused by chronic workplace stress. The second thing I noticed was that our burnouts were not just the result of unrealistic, unsustainable workloads, although that is a big part of the problem. No, my fellow deprogrammers described workplaces in which there was a clear shortage of safety, transparency, accountability, and trust. They were places where many people didn't feel safe enough to put up their hand and say, "I need help," or "I've messed up." The third thing I noticed was the sheer and disproportionate number of IT security professionals that just kept coming in. I don't think it's a coincidence that at the time, this meme was going viral. After I left hospital, I continued to meet so many burnt-out people that I just couldn't stop wondering, what does this mean for our organisations and their cyber risk? Well, in 2022, Microsoft conducted a study in 11 countries across 22,000 people, a mix of industries, company sizes, and job levels, and found that half the entire workforce was burnt out. Other studies have shown similar or worse rates. And when it comes to cybersecurity professionals, the very people tasked with protecting our organisations from cyber risk, it gets worse. 50 to 85% are experiencing burnout. 65% have considered leaving their jobs because of the stress. And by 2025, it's predicted that a quarter of all cybersecurity leaders will change roles entirely because of workplace stress and burnout. And all of this is against a backdrop of a global shortage in cyber talent. So this is where we are today. If we do nothing, our organisations will have very little protection against a constantly growing and increasingly sophisticated cybercrime threat. That's where we're heading. We are shooting ourselves in the foot. And it isn't just our health that's costing us. Globally, burnout culture is costing businesses $322 billion in lost productivity costs and turnover. That's a lot of money, isn't it? It's more than double what organisations around the world are spending on cybersecurity. So how is burnout a cyber risk? To err is human. We all make mistakes. As our stress levels rise, so does our likelihood of making simple mistakes. During my burnout, I was very lucky to find a fantastic therapist. Her name is Eve Parmiter, and she's written that burnout reduces functional capacity. We are less engaged, less present, more prone to errors, like accidentally clicking on a phishing link. Or, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that's done this, sent an email to the wrong person by mistake. Or perhaps you've accidentally attached the wrong file to an email. Research shows that when our cognitive loads are overwhelmed, or when we're multitasking, we are less able to concentrate on the task at hand. And so when we add stress and distraction on top of that, we tend to make mistakes or decisions we later regret, which makes us more prone to cyber attacks, which, when we're faced with an overburdened cyber workforce, we are then less able to address. So understanding how stress impacts our behaviour is critical to improving cybersecurity. And it is critical because 80 to 95% of all data breaches are the result of human error. And yet, less than 4% of publications from the world's top 3 scientific cybersecurity conferences have anything to do with the human factor. So in other words, we're spending less than 4% of effort to understand more than 80% of the problem. And it is a problem. One study showed that almost 4 in 10 of the most severe data breaches are the result of stressed, tired employees. So there I was, helping organizations reduce their cyber risk, and here I was potentially contributing to it. I was the human factor in cyber risk. Now, before any of us run back to our workplaces and fire the burnt out for increasing cyber risk, consider this. Knowing that my situation was part of the problem means that I can now be part of the solution. Because just as it is in cybersecurity, the more aware we are of our vulnerabilities, the sooner we are able to put protective and restorative measures in place, reduce our risk, and increase our resilience. Today's cyber challenges require us as individuals, organizations, and the societies we live in to be healthier, more humane, more secure, more resilient. And I'm convinced of something that I very much hope I can convince you of as well, which is that our individual well-being and performance, and the performance and resilience of our organizations is intrinsically connected. So it's clear we need some solutions, a mix of individual and organizational ones. Equipping us with the right tools for the job is vital, and I believe that in an age of acceleration, overwork, and overwhelm, one of the greatest tools we have at our disposal in mitigating both burnout and cyber risk is rest and renewal. Now, it might sound trite, but we need to stop demonizing sleep and start getting enough of it, because it increases our cognitive performance and our functional capacity and reduces our error rate. One of the other things that I've found really helpful for me in my recovery has been mindfulness meditation. There are various forms of it, but at its core, it's really just about being more mindful, more present, more intentional in the moment, whatever it is that we're doing. And so I began to wonder about the organizational benefits that might flow from having a more mindful workforce. So I went digging, and guess what? Researchers discovered that when organizations use mindfulness techniques in their cybersecurity awareness trainings, their employees are significantly less likely to accidentally click on a phishing link. We need to equip individuals with tools, but we also need to shape our organizational cultures with the right traits. So, what are they, and how do we do that? Well, in the Culture Code, New York Times bestselling author Daniel Coyle spent years researching the world's most successful organizations. And he found that they all have 3 traits in common. The first is that in their cultures, they are ones of safety. And the message in those organizations is, you are safe, we share risk here. People feel like they belong and will be protected. And that's exactly what my fellow deprogrammers in the Burnout program didn't have in their organizations. Ask yourselves, do you have that in yours? The second trait that these organizations have is that people regularly express their vulnerabilities, including when they've made a mistake. And when they do, they are supported, not punished for it. You know, phishing emails are the #1 way in which cyber attackers get into our organizations. And on average, it'll take an organization 287 days before they know that they've been breached. I wonder, what would it take for you to feel safe enough at work to put up your hand and say, I think I clicked on a phishing link? How could you make your teams feel safe enough to admit this? What happens to your colleagues if they accidentally, repeatedly click on a phishing link? Are they thanked for highlighting important vulnerabilities in your business before the hackers do? The third thing that these successful organizations have in common is that everyone in the organization understands how what they do contributes to the organization's bigger goal. And every single cybersecurity leader that I've spoken to has spoken about the need for everyone in the business to understand today that every single one of us plays a critical role now in keeping our digitally connected businesses cyber safe. Because it takes more than just us cybersecurity professionals to manage these challenging and dynamic cyber risks. It requires every single one of us across businesses, across industries, to come together, to collaborate, to share our challenges and best practices, and to pool our creativity. And to do that, we need to feel safe and connected and switched on. Cybersecurity is not just a tech issue, it's a human one. That's why we often hear that damaging phrase, humans are the weakest link in security. Burnout culture makes us so, but human-centered organizational cultures make us the most valuable first line in cyber defense. We live in a time when the cyber risks we face as a society are becoming existential. And cyber professionals are under immense pressure managing them. Our burnout culture is increasing our cyber risk. Something needs to change. And I think that we should collectively do something about this. And we can. I believe that fostering human-centered cultures in our organizations is key for individuals, for organizations, and society. It's a win-win-win. This is within our power. It's something we can do. And having had a burnout and shared that experience with you, I hope I've convinced you that we must. Now, usually a TED talk like this would end in some kind of a call to action. But we're all a little bit overwhelmed, aren't we? So here's my invitation to you. In order to be switched on, what's one thing you can do today to switch off? Thank you.